The garage door groaned open, and for a split second, life was perfect. Chrome so bright it could blind you. Hugger orange paint so deep you could drown in it. My '67 Camaro SS, the car I'd spent 18 months rebuilding bolt by bolt, sat there, purring like a big cat. Then, the screaming started. Someone call 911. He's stealing my car. I looked up to see my HOA president, Brenda, charging across the lawn like she was storming the beaches. Phone already pressed to her ear. Yes, I'm watching a man steal my Camaro right now. Yes. Send everyone. Within seconds, the distant wail of sirens cut through the quiet evening. And there I was, standing in my own driveway, holding my own keys, about to be arrested for stealing my own car. What would you do if your neighbor could summon the police with a single lie? Because that night, I found out exactly how dangerous a Karen with power can be. My name's Marcus, third-generation mechanic. My grandfather taught my dad taught me, and I've been elbows deep in engines since I could hold a wrench. Cars aren't just my job, they're in my blood. Last year, after a divorce that cost me more than just a ring, I scraped together what I had left and bought a modest house in Willowbrook Estates. You know the type: matching mailboxes, manicured lawns, and an HOA that swears they keep the neighborhood beautiful, but really just keep the lawyers busy. The Camaro wasn't some shiny midlife crisis toy. I found her at an estate sale, or rather, I rescued her. Rust everywhere, seats ripped, engine dead. Most people would have paid someone to haul it away. I paid $3,200 cash and saw the bones of something worth saving. Every weekend for a year and a half, I turned that wreck into a masterpiece. New 350 small block, turbo 400 transmission, suspension rebuilt from the ground up. For months just on the paint, sanding, priming, wet sanding again until the orange finish gleamed like molten metal. I photographed everything for insurance, from the day I dragged her home on a trailer to the moment she roared back to life. Every bolt, gasket, and weld had a story. This car wasn't just mine, it was part of me, which is why, when Brenda decided she owned it, things went from neighborly to nuclear almost overnight. Brenda Wilson wasn't just my neighbor, she was the living, breathing embodiment of an HOA rulebook. Moved into Willowbrook 5 years ago and wasted no time making herself queen of the cul-de-sac. President of the HOA 3 years running, unopposed, mostly because no one else wanted the job or the headache. Brenda's superpower: weaponizing rules. She could spot a trash can left out 12 minutes past pickup like a hawk spotting a mouse. Fence posts too tall? Violation. Mailbox font not community approved? Violation. She once cited me for grass allegedly over 2.5 inches tall. And yes, she brought a ruler. The woman drove a spotless white BMW, had nails that had never met a socket wrench, and a hairstyle so perfectly engineered it could survive a hurricane. Her smile could freeze antifreeze, and behind it was the absolute certainty that she knew what was best for everyone. 2 weeks before the night of the 911 call, she'd already made her move. I was bleeding brake lines in my garage when she marched over, disgusted by the sound of my impact wrench. There's a noise ordinance. No power tools after 6 p.m., she said, like she was announcing a death sentence. I stayed polite. City ordinance says hobby works fine until 9. I can show you the documentation. Her smile went from frosty to arctic. We'll see about that. This kind of industrial activity affects property values. The way she said industrial activity, you'd think I was running a meth lab instead of restoring a classic car. I should have known then. Brenda wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was looking for a fight. It was a Saturday morning, and Brenda was in full social queen mode, hosting one of her monthly backyard pool parties. The kind where the mimosas flowed, the gossip was louder than the music, and every conversation was about vacations, kids' grades, or whose hydrangeas were blooming better. I was in my garage, tightening a few bolts, when her voice cut through the chatter like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, that's my new Camaro," she bragged, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "Just bought it from a classic dealer in Phoenix. $45,000, but worth every penny. They're shipping it next week." My wrench hit the concrete. I peeked out, and there she was, holding her phone, showing off pictures to her guests. Pictures of a car identical to mine. Same model, same year, same hugger orange paint, same chrome. Except they weren't her pictures. They were dealer stock photos, the kind you find with a 2-second Google search. My stomach sank. I'd seen Brenda petty before, but this was different. This was her planting a seed, laying the groundwork for whatever she was planning. I told myself to let it slide, to focus on my own life. But that night, as I wiped down the Camaro's hood under the garage lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that Brenda wasn't just talking. She was preparing for something, and I was about to find out exactly what. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, halfway through a sandwich, when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. "Sir, this is Officer Daniels with the local police department. We've had a report of a stolen vehicle registered to your address. We need you to come home immediately." My heart thudded. Stolen vehicle? My Camaro was safe in my locked garage, wasn't it? By the time I pulled into the neighborhood, I could see the flashing lights from a block away. 2 squad cars were parked in front of my driveway. My garage door was wide open, and there, standing front and center, was Brenda, one manicured hand on her hip, the other pointing dramatically at my Camaro. "That's it. That's my car. He took it right out of my driveway," she was saying to an officer, her voice dripping with fake outrage. I stepped out of my truck, keeping my voice steady. "That's my car. I've owned it for 12 years. Brenda spun toward me, eyes wide like she'd just caught a bank robber. "Liar. I bought this exact car last week from a dealer in Phoenix. He must have switched the plates." The officer held up a hand. "Sir, can you provide proof of ownership? Registration? Title? Anything?" I nodded, unlocking my front door with shaky hands. Within minutes, I had a folder in my grip, original bill of sale, DMV registration, even photos of me restoring the car in my driveway from years ago. The officers flipped through them, exchanged a look, and then turned to Brenda. "This vehicle is clearly his. You need to step back." Brenda's face went pale, but she wasn't done. "I don't care what your papers say. I know that's mine." That's when Officer Daniel's tone shifted from polite to steel. "If you keep making false claims, you could be the one facing charges." For the first time since I'd known her, Brenda shut up. She crossed her arms, muttered something about calling her lawyer, and stomped off toward her house. But as the officers left, one of them leaned toward me and said quietly, "Watch your back. She's not finished." The morning after the 911 incident, I expected maybe an awkward wave from Brenda, maybe even a fake smile. Instead, I opened my mailbox to find a fat, official-looking envelope from the HOA, the kind with bold red letters across the top, "Immediate action required." Inside, 4 separate violation notices, each one about my Camaro, unauthorized commercial vehicle, inappropriate parking position, improper use of driveway space, and my personal favorite, potential safety hazard to community members. Apparently, according to Brenda, who I later found out had signed her name on every complaint, my Camaro was attracting the wrong kind of people to the neighborhood. The kicker, the paperwork stated I had 7 days to remove the vehicle in question, or face daily fines of $150. This wasn't about rules. This was about war. So I did what any rational person would do. I went to the HOA office in person. The moment I stepped in, I saw her, sitting behind the front desk like she owned the place, sipping a latte and pretending not to notice me. "Morning, Marcus," she said, without looking up from her phone. I put the stack of violation letters on the counter. "You want to explain this?" Her smile didn't even crack. "Just doing my duty as HOA vice president. We all have to follow the rules." I leaned in. "Except these aren't rules. They're fiction." She just shrugged, as if to say, "Prove it." In that moment, I realized Brenda wasn't going to stop. She wasn't bluffing. She was going to bury me in paperwork until I either gave in or lost my mind. What she didn't know was, I had a plan of my own. If Brenda wanted a war, I was ready to fight on a battlefield she didn't control. First stop, my lawyer's office. I dropped the stack of HOA letters on his desk, and after 5 minutes of reading, he looked up at me and said, "Marcus, this is harassment, and we can prove it." We drafted a formal cease and desist address to both Brenda and the entire HOA board, warning them that continued baseless violations could lead to legal action. But I wasn't done. I also started digging into the HOA's own bylaws, which, funny enough, they had posted online. And guess what I found? A tiny clause buried on page 37 stating that the HOA must document photographic proof of any violation before issuing a fine. Not a single one of Brenda's complaints had a photo. Armed with that, I filed a formal dispute for every violation she'd sent me, forcing the board to put them on the agenda for the next HOA meeting. Word started spreading in the neighborhood. People I barely talked to before began knocking on my door to share their own Brenda horror stories, everything from nitpicking lawn lengths to threatening fines over unapproved Halloween decorations. By the end of the week, I had a small army of neighbors ready to show up at the meeting with me. Brenda thought she could isolate me and wear me down. Instead, she'd managed to unite half the neighborhood against her. The fuse was lit. The next meeting wasn't going to be a discussion. It was going to be a showdown. The HOA must have felt the heat, because just 2 days before the scheduled meeting, I got an email marked urgent. Emergency board meeting, attendance mandatory. Mandatory? That wasn't in any bylaw I'd read. Still, I knew exactly what this was. A setup. They wanted to corner me without my growing army of neighbors present, to pressure me into dropping the disputes before the official meeting. When I walked into the HOA's cramped office that Thursday night, the atmosphere was hostile. Brenda sat at the center of the long table like a queen holding court, her lips curled in a smug half-smile. Beside her were 4 board members I'd never seen outside of these meetings. A pile of manila folders sat in front of them like a stack of loaded weapons. Brenda leaned forward. "Marcus, we've reviewed your disputes, and frankly, you're wasting everyone's time. We are prepared to dismiss some of the violations if you agree to pay the remaining fines today and sign a behavior agreement." Behavior agreement? The room went silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I took a slow breath, then slid my phone onto the table, recording. "I'll sign nothing," I said, "but you will explain why you've been issuing fines without photographic proof, in violation of your own bylaws. And since "You seem to enjoy paperwork. I've brought some of my own." I reached into my bag and pulled out copies of the cease and desist letter my lawyer had prepared, one for each board member. Their smug expressions faltered. Brenda's smile disappeared entirely. The trap had been set, but it wasn't for me. As I walked out of that so-called emergency meeting, the night air felt heavier than usual. I'd just thrown a legal grenade into the middle of the HOA boardroom, but I knew the fight was far from over. Brenda wasn't the type to surrender quietly. No, she'd double down, regroup, and come back swinging. And judging by the frantic whispers I heard as I left, the next round was already in motion. The cease and desist letters were just the opening move in a much bigger game. What I didn't realize then was that my little war with the HOA was about to go public, and not in the way I expected. Because in a matter of days, a leaked recording, a furious neighborhood meeting, and a very unexpected ally would turn this private battle into a community-wide uprising. This is just the beginning. To be continued.